All right, it is I, the Beaveman, and we are back. It's the Slaptail Squad. So you asked for it, Slaptail Nation. Maybe you didn't, as I said the first time, but you got it anyway. It's part two of the Karate Kid.
Slaptail Squad, assemble.
Our resident expert, my number two, the Ronz.
Hey, slight disclaimer: I'm not an expert, but I have some knowledge in it.
You might. So you're saying you're not an expert at Karate Kid, but you are an expert at karate.
Oh, you're one hell of a politician, Beaveman. I would vote for you, even though I don't know what you're running for. No, I am not an expert in karate. I am a humble student, even though I am a black belt.
All right. So, okay. Also with us today, fellow nerd, though younger than myself, we've got Andy, still perpetrating that he's a young man, sporting the Andy title.
Sporting the Andy title.
Friend of the show. Friend of the show.
Hey, guys. Thank you.
For joining us, Andy.
No, thank you again. Appreciate it. Looking forward to talking more Karate Kid universe.
All right.
Yeah, that's a man who's hyped. Right there. He's hyped. You understand that, Ronz? When I say we're going to talk, we're going to get into it. That's what we're going to do. You got to get hyped. You got to get hyped there, Ronz.
Hey. I will do my best.
Start speaking in a Scottish accent, Ronz. Come on.
Wouldn't it be better if, like, Karate Kid was done in a Scottish accent or like that? Daniel-san,
badass.
You must avenge me.
Stop talking on me guilt. Also with us today is fruit of my loins, Skyler, the Skyboy, Skyman, if you will now. Too big to be the Skyboy anymore. He is the Skyman. You wanted to
with a sky beard now.
Yes, I have given into the quarantine beard phase. Haven't started making bread yet. I assume that'll come soon.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope,
we're going to get into it, by God, because this is questionably, I'm going to go ahead and dare I say it, this is questionably my favorite Karate Kid movie, Karate Kid Part 2.
Amen.
It is the best one.
Praise is needed here. You are correct. Through the entire Karate Kid genre, all of them have their hallmark, but everybody has their favorite. It is what your favorite is to you is the deepest meaning to us. So carry on and praise the Karate Kid as you would.
Wow. Hey, Ron, so which one is your favorite then?
Ooh.
You know, I like them all. I like them all, Beaveman. And
I like the next Karate Kid. I like pick the worst one, Ron. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Pick the fucking worst one. You know, I like the next Karate Kid.
I think the first one was probably the best one for me because it gave closure, right? It really did. Because if you look at Karate Kid 2, there was an opening left. Chosen.
Why are you hopping right to the ending?
The ending.
Well, you said what's my favorite, and I'm telling you my favorite.
Okay,
why it's my favorite.
They all end abruptly.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
They
all end abruptly.
There is closure at the end of one. There really is.
End with Mr. Miyagi going.
No.
Every movie ends the same way. Miyagi smiling, and it hands on him. And then
because
credits.
at the end of Karate Kid 1, right? Or
it's
Karate
Kid 1. It's not fucking Karate Kid 1.
It's simply the Karate Kid.
The Karate
Kid I.
Karate Kid. Right? Johnny comes up and gives him the trophy saying, "You're all right, Daniel." Right? Which means, guess what? I honor you. There's closure. We're cool. In Karate Kid 2, Chosen.
Hold on. Just hold on.
Hold on.
That is not how it ends.
All right. Explain to me how it ends.
Mr. Miyagi, and then Pat Morita smiles. And
Yeah, it just fades to black.
Okay, yeah, from a cinematic point of view, because we have the Skylar man here. Yeah, he's right. He's right. But there's closure. In 2, Chosen is defeated, but he goes off.
Stop going to the ending. Stop talking about the ending.
All right, whatever. Karate Kid.
Like simply asked was.
The Karate Kid is my favorite so far.
First one? Karate Kid 1?
Yes.
Karate Kid, Roman numeral 1.
Yeah,
Karate
no matter
Kid
what
episode
I say.
1.
The Beaveman reminds me of my drill sergeant in. The Beaveman reminds me of my drill sergeant in boot camp, because no matter what you said, it was wrong. No matter whether it was right, or wrong, it was wrong.
Maybe you should try being right for a change, Ron.
Oh.
Ronz, you were in the Air Force. If you want me to remind you of what your drill sergeant was like, here, let me give it a try. Hey, Sunshine, did you want to come to training today? It's okay if you don't want to. Go ahead and sleep in a little bit, because it's the Air Force.
Yeah, I think it's like that for all the branches.
Okay.
Okay.
Why is we didn't ask Skylar though, because he is not he's younger. What do you think is your favorite Karate Kid movie?
He's on the payroll. He's gonna have to say 3.
Well, I like the second movie. I like the show a lot, like the new show, but I think as far as, what movie do they actually like explore the aspects of karate and the tradition, that's pretty much only the second one, or at least it's majorly the second one, which is why I like it so much, because they actually focus on the karate, and they go to Okinawa and they talk about some of the history of the style that is in the movie and everything, and I'm like, that's what I like about it the most.
And from your personal training, did you see any of that in the movie?
It's been a while since I've actually watched the second one. I haven't seen. I don't know. I've watched bits and pieces from the second one, but because our style is, well, I think most styles, talking from my very far long ago experience of karate and Okinawan history. From what I remember, most of them did start or originated somewhere from China. So I feel like there is, I'm assuming, some kind of overlap, because then our style eventually also is from Okinawa. But I don't know if I don't know if I'd be able to pick out specific things, or maybe even know they did it.
What's actually really cool, if you want to see a really decent history of the martial arts, and if you actually go to Fumio Demura's site, because he's trained in Chateau Ryu. I always have a hard time saying Ryu, which just basically means school, basically. He actually breaks it down pretty well and talks about how, karate came from, basically, like you said, it really did come from China, and then Okinawa, and it actually didn't get to Japan, he said, I think for 400 years, from Okinawa to Japan. It took 400 years or some shit, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. So that's pretty awesome. And then, of course, throughout history, there's times when Okinawa is part of Japan where it's actually its own thing or whatever. So it is actually really cool. So you can actually say that you can trace everything from China. But if you really want to get purist about it, if you really want to think about it, China may not actually be the birthplace of martial arts, even though we kind of think of that as it is, because dating back farther, you can actually see in the ancient, writings on the pyramids, you can see that they practiced combat, which is kind of cool. So you might actually be able to trace it back even farther than that for, written time. But for now, we all kind of just basically say, yes, our styles came from, at some point, they really came from China.
Yeah, and I think because they talk about when Japan found out that they weren't the center of the world because they were on an island.
What? No.
Well, you talk about because of Japan's flag is them centralized and everything. So one specific part of the world, say in China, it is realistic to think that there might be origins in other places of the world because they're all isolated from each other. But, common ideas happen all the time, or common situations happen all
Yep.
the time. So it's
What
really
is that
not
actual name of
outlandish
that
to think.
theory? What's the name of that theory? It's like universal thinking or something like that.
Yeah, it's where some people have, like, two people have the same idea at the same time, but they're completely unrelated.
Parallel thought, something like that.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, something like that, basically.
Yeah, but most of our, it's interesting that most of our, association with that stuff does come from Asia and over in China and Okinawa, which, like you were saying earlier, Okinawa's ownership has been passed around a vast amount of times.
Yeah, like I said, if you really want to get a good breakdown of the history, though, thank you, good old Fumio Demura, Ninth Dawn in Shitoru. Also, badass in Kabuto, which the Ronz loves, and Bato.
I do.
Do you don't do Bato Do though, Ronz? When are you gonna take that up?
When they offer it.
Do you know what that is?
No, not at all. But it's got the word dough in it, so it's got to be good. What is Bato Do?
Yeah, Way of the Sword.
Oh, like Aido and Kendo.
Except it's, generically speaking, Bato Do, Way of the Sword.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this, listening audience. If you're just now joining us and you've never listened to the podcast before, the Ronz is here, and he is our resident expert in karate. And that is because the Ronz is, you guessed it, a black belt. Wait for it. A black belt. Ron, so what are you, like a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th dan? What are you?
No.
You should give yourself a 10th dan because you're American, because that's what they do.
No. I am humbly
a red belt.
No, I am humbly a Shodan, a first-degree black belt in Okinawan karate and Okinawan kabuto or Okinawan weapons.
Oh, I thought you were a 2nd dan in Kabuto.
No, just first degree or Shodan.
You're the highest ranking Kabuto practitioner in your family, though?
In my family, yes. However,
that is what I asked. Why did you restate the question?
Because he's about to tell us who is above him outside of his family.
No,
right, and there's no however, because it was your family. The answer is yes or no.
No. Let me state this straight up. However, if had my wife not been injured, she would be higher ranking than me. And my son did not have school because he started about the same time I did. He would be higher ranking than me in Kabuto as well.
I think the question was.
So, yeah. You, what does a belt do but hold up your pants? And,
yes, and this brings me, I'm glad that you said that. You know why I'm glad that you said that?
Because you need a belt for your pants?
No, because I have years, and I think that Andy can back me up on this. And let me also say, I don't know if you folks know this, because Andy doesn't consider it part of his identity that everybody needs to know this. But since Andy is friend of the show, did you know, Ronz, that Andy is also a black belt?
Yes, I did.
But Andy is not a beginner black belt.
What?
He's not some first dan sucking at the teat of his sensei. He's not some fresh black belt.
I think we've established that. What dan is he then?
Well,
is he a prima donna?
He's a second dan. And had COVID not hit, he would be a third dan.
And what current rank are you then, Beaveman?
Me?
Yeah.
Who said that I do martial arts?
You did. You said you were a black belt.
Did? When? When did I say that?
I listened to the last podcast.
You said it last week.
You had not listened to the last podcast. I am also a second dan, but Andy is my senior in martial arts. I'm much older than him.
And I was honored to be at your, I think, both your tests.
No one asked.
Yeah, no one cared. No one cared.
But we
over there. Go on.
But we practice jujitsu. And Ronz, do you know what jujitsu means?
Oh, this is a pop quiz. It means one who gets folded in their own clothes.
Jujitsu is the act of choking another person for one's own happiness.
Okay.
So, Ronz, we invite you to come train jujitsu with us.
Well, thank
So
you. I
that we may
appreciate
be
it.
happy.
Yeah.
So that we may.
I think a lot of people will be happy to see me walk in on that class.
Well,
We can
I know.
achieve true happiness.
Well, I noticed that you did not introduce my rank that I left behind, like probably 6 years ago at this point.
I was getting to you.
And for those who are listening, jujitsu means gentle art. So
you're saying my definition is? Are you saying my? And this is why I say there is a line, and I don't want to jump ahead. Also, the Karate Kid, which is the Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan version. There is a line in that I just absolutely love, but I always say it for my style, and where he says Kung Fu is everything. I always say that about Jiu-Jitsu.
I think martial arts in general is everything. The way you open a door,
Yes.
the way you do so it's definitely a universal line that I think anybody could take from, because everything relates to everything if you want to be, so ballooned about it.
Onash. So what rank did you leave with then, Skylar? Or are you coming back to us with that rank?
I genuinely
Martial
don't know
arts.
what rank I was.
I think you were blue.
Martial arts is lifelong learning.
I had well, I don't know the technical term for what I had. I was a green belt, I think was the last belt I tested for.
I know you and I think tested for green or blue.
We both tested for blue, and then a few of our students. I made it up to green, but a few of the people that we also trained with dropped out before after we took blue.
Yeah.
So
You made it to purple.
Huh?
You made it to purple.
I don't know. My belts are somewhere in here.
You made it to purple. You were below brown.
Yeah, I remember because I was 2 full ranks away. So yes, I did make it to purple, which
Okay.
I have my belts in my room somewhere, so I'll have to actually.
Just too small for him now. Hi-yo!
No, they'll fit. I just
Purple belt
don't earn
in
them.
karate, apparently a green belt in memory.
Probably more like an orange belt.
Orange belt with a red with a red stripe.
Interesting little factoid. The whole belt system is pretty ridiculous in my mind. And I made that comment about why do you need a belt? It's only to hold up your pants around some Tang Soo Do people. And they got all pissy because they just give a shit about the belt.
Well, they have more ranks of belt. Well, no, did they have more or did they have less? Because they had other belt colors.
They have about the same as standard karate. They're not like Taekwondo where they have 50 belts.
Mm-hmm.
I have a red belt in Tang Soo Do, which is brown in karate.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, because I remember the very brief time I did also do Tang Soo Do, which pretty much was just me standing around like, what are you guys doing? People. I mean, a lot of people in martial arts will get hung up on belts and stuff, and I know when I did martial arts, I was hung up on rank, and I was like, okay, what is the furthest I can take my rank rather than my training? But now, because I am my mental age is 30 to 40 years above my physical age, now I'm just I'm happy to practice anything. I don't need a rank or a belt for any of it.
Well, I actually like the old system. In my opinion, and I'm sure this is actually verified, the belt system really took off after Americans started wanting to practice martial arts. Because Americans were not cool with the original way. And Andy can back me up on this, our style used to only have 2 belts.
Yes, correct.
It had white and it had black.
Yep.
Once you made it all the way through and you became a black belt, then you were a black belt. But there was no belt in between. It was white to black.
Yep. And the oldest stories we hear is that your white belt got so dirty that it became black.
Yeah.
Now, you guys also in your style, correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys are the experts, is that at a certain point, you guys don't get a belt rank, you get a patch.
That is one could argue in our style that it is more important to earn the patch than anything.
Why is that?
I would agree wholeheartedly. The patch to me, and I'm sure our sensei would has maybe his own views on it, but the patch to me means you have came and then kept coming back, and you've finally given yourself over to the art, quote unquote, because it's not always fun. It's not always pleasant because it is very painful. It is very difficult sometimes. You'll do techniques over and over again. Beaveman and I have been doing it when we've been so pissed off that we get done. We just kind of just go, all right, one more time.
Not coming back.
Or
Not coming back.
Or we'll do 6 of them, and then we're supposed to do 10, but we do the 7th one right when all 6 were bad, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm good. I want to end on a good one because I know I'm going to mess it up again afterward. But the patch is basically you sticking around long enough and showing the amount of respect to the art as well as your fellow students that you keep coming and let them practice on you, and you get to practice on them, that you're kind of invited into the style.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah, the 2 most important things in our style, to me, is earning the mon, our patch, and receiving directions on how to make the Yorabo, which is our signature weapon. That is the 2 most important things in our style. And actually, to motivate the boy, I showed him his future Yorabo. I showed him a stick, and I'm like, should you make it, you will get this stick to make your Yorabo with the directions to make your Yorabo.
Now that's that little piece of wood you guys carry in your belt.
I'm sorry, did you just call it a little piece of wood that we carry?
I did indeed. For the non-traditional practitioners of your style that don't know what you're talking about.
Ronz, do you know what jujitsu means?
What does it mean, B-Man?
Jiu-jitsu is also known as involuntary yoga.
Involuntary yoga.
If I wanted to practice yoga under my power, basically.
Basically contort your body in yoga poses it should not be in. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, I've seen what you guys practice, yeah. But for our listeners out there who don't know what a yarbo is. Right,
Yarbo? Y'all don't know what yarbo
is. No, all they know is it's what you describe it as a piece of wood that you're going to give the son there, and then he is going to have to make. We all know he's your kin, so you're going to give him a gift, and as your kin, he's going to have to make this thing out of a stick. So,
well, I'm only 6% there.
I don't even know if I would say 6%.
Well, what is it? Is it 50 or 100 hours?
100.
There's really no set time. It's when the teacher feels you are ready to.
Yeah, you could get to 300 hours, and I could still say no.
Exactly.
Well, if we base it on 100 hours, I have 6 hours.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So 6%.
It's 2 years.
But relating it back to the Karate Kid, they do the same thing. Well, Mr. Miyagi does the same thing where they ask what Daniel's belt rank is after he's been training for a month and a half, and Mr. Miyagi just, unfortunately for some poor soul, steals somebody else's black belt and gives it to him.
So what you're saying then, Skylar, is after 4 days of training with the Beaveman, you will be a black belt then. I look forward to seeing that.
I don't want to say that rank. I want to be careful how I say this. I don't want to say that rank doesn't matter. I want to say rank particularly doesn't matter to me as an individual anymore. I think as long as you're training, and because after I stopped doing karate, I wanted to keep doing martial arts, and I just kind of fell out of it, and I couldn't find like a new specific way to keep continuing rank or keep continuing whatever different aspects of it. So now we're at this point where I'm like, I could stay a white belt for the rest of my life, and I'd be completely fine being a white belt forever in any martial art, as long as I just learn. I think that's what I really care about at this point.
Right. Well, when I took Kung Fu a million years ago, I did not take it very long, but there's no belt system in Kung Fu.
I thought
you don't get a different belt, you don't get a different color. It's just everybody wears the same thing. So
Now, do you think
Anyway.
belt systems are a waste of time?
I just think that it's kind of a way, it's kind of like a little reward. I think that's why it's so Americanized. It keeps people coming so that they can get the next belt. But as we said, that it's really no indicator of how much you actually know anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm a black belt doesn't mean that I can kick any ass. Black belt means I'm a good student.
Right. I would agree.
I
You are a good
achieved,
student.
I learned, I stuck with it, I learned. And that's what I think that each thing is. Now that, as a second Dan, it just means that, yes, I'm a student, but I could also teach. So, for example, because of the pandemic, getting off topic with a Karate Kid here, but because of the pandemic, we're not doing training like we normally would. We've been training outside at a distance, and all we've done is work on weapons work. And so now, recently, finally, I'm teaching my son. I wanted to be teaching the daughter also. So theoretically, if we never make it back into the dojo and he never goes to the dojo with me, Skylar can be trained all the way up to black belt by me.
Wow. Fantastic. And that'll take 5 days.
Right. Well, if we do a montage.
If we do a montage, it'll go faster. But it's a good point because belts mean different things to different people. But there are plenty of people who get very, very high rank, and like he was saying, they're just good. It's the same. I kind of equate it the same with, scores and tests in school and things where you can be
Degrees.
a really good. Yeah, you can be a really good student because I was a fine student and I didn't have, amazing blown out of the water grades, but you still are just a fine student and you get the marks you have to. And it's kind of, people can do the same thing with belts. It's not somebody's place to say somebody doesn't deserve a black belt, but there are people that you look at them and you're like, how'd you get that?
Well,
I'm one of those.
You can go to tournaments and see kids that are like, 22 years old and they're fourth dans, fifth dans, sixth dans. You're like, what? What the fuck? What? Well, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, who cares?
And then you just tackle them and like, I'm a white belt. Defend yourself.
Well, I've shown that before. I mean, actually,
Yeah,
one of the kids that we did it with, very talented in Tang Sudo, very good, skilled, technical fighter. And I was explaining to him, I'm like, you really should come. I'm like, just come sometime to my dojo with me and do jujitsu with us for fun. Or I'll show you some jujitsu stuff because I'm like, you're a very good fighter. I'm like, but I'd be all over you in a second. And so, and I did show him quite a lot of stuff about actual combat fighting or close quarter fighting. Because when you fight in tournaments and things like that, or you fight with people who are tournament fighters or karate and taekwondo and Tang Sudo, they hate it when you get close to them. When you get in grappling distance, they freak the fuck out. Or especially if you shoot off to the side of them, which is what we do in jiu-jitsu in our style. We don't go, hey, diddle, diddle down the middle. We go to the outside. We are always on the outside of you somehow. And they freak, and they're like, holy shit. And you can also do tells on them, they do this fun thing in tournament fighting where they run at you really fast and they hit you and they run past you. But you can tell when they're going to do it. And I kept telling him, like, you really should watch it when you do that, even with your tournament fighting. He's like, no, I got it. And so I could tell he was going to do it. And all I did was do one of our pivots that we do. And I took his legs out from under him and he fell chest first onto the ground. So
yeah.
there's a difference, there's benefits to knowing that stuff, but you actually have to know how to defend yourself for real, because that high kicking, long distance stuff is really pretty to watch. But honestly, it's once somebody gets in on you, you're kind of fucked.
Well,
You are.
Yeah, to relate it back to the Karate Kid, they do show that kind of like whole aspect, and they kind of parody a little bit of the first movie when Daniel's fighting Chosen at the end. It's a real fight and there's no rules. He challenges him to a fight to the death, and he tries to do the crank kick and he gets immediately stopped and slapped down because it wasn't going to work. So that I like the second movie a lot because it delves more into, I feel like the second movie, for lack of a better word, is a little more raw with its karate, where it's got, the first movie has stakes, but the second movie is more like, okay, let's move. It literally is, let's move him from a tournament setting to let's throw him in the real world and see how he fights that way, which I think is really interesting.
And you don't see a belt system being played into it. Only when he goes to Chosen's or Sato's dojo do you see black belts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the belt system was founded by Dr. Jigaro Kano, who was the founder
Judo,
of
right?
Judo, right? Yeah. And when you take away the meaning behind the belt, of course, that's stripping away why I have a belt versus the skill that you possess. That's when you really get to see it, like you said, when he's fighting Chosen. Okay, you have a black belt. This is the real world. Let's see how you play.
Yeah.
And I did like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like that a lot more.
I also like that the Karate Kid 2 kind of focuses more on Miyagi. They're kind of like dual leads, because in the first movie, it's all about Daniel. Like we start with him, we follow him the whole movie, and Miyagi's there. Now, and I'm not saying part 2 is not about Daniel, but Miyagi's kind of the driving force behind everything that happens in part 2. His dad gets sick, so he has to go to Okinawa. Daniel goes with him. This grudge that Miyagi and his childhood friend have gets somehow morphed onto Chosen and Daniel. So I'm just a big Miyagi fan, so therefore I like seeing him a little more front and center and kind of a little more in control. Plus, you get that added bonus at the end or there's some good jokes along the way, like when Daniel sees Sato chopping that giant tree log, and he goes, "Can you do that?" He goes, "Don't know. I've never been attacked by a tree."
Yeah. Oh, no, Daniel.
Well,
never been.
He's great for all the one-liners, because if you think about it, okay, so Mr. Miyagi, he's not, Pat Morita is not a martial artist.
No.
But Mr. Miyagi may have been one of the most influential martial artists, at least in America, because a lot of the stuff that he says, and I was busting Ron's chops about this, because I'm like, your sensei says the stuff that Mr. Miyagi says all the time, but he never credits him. I'm like, I say it, and I've said a lot of the stuff to our students also in the past, and I said, and I'll say, well, Mr. Miyagi was right when he said this, because it's true. Best way to defend against a punch, not be there.
Yeah.
All these things, which is I've heard Ron's sensei say the same shit Mr. Miyagi says, and I'm like, hey, why don't you credit where that came from, motherfucker? Motherfucker.
But they've been doing martial arts longer than before the Karate Kid came out.
No, he hasn't. Your sensei has not done martial arts longer than when the Karate Kid came out.
Okay, I'm trying to
Karate
figure
Kid
out which.
came out in 1984. Your sensei has not been doing martial arts since 1984, and if he wasn't a black belt in 1984.
Oh, I'll agree with that. I don't think I was a black belt in '84.
I definitely wasn't.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't either.
I like the Karate Kid 2 for a couple reasons.
And what are those reasons?
We got a real bad guy. Chosen is the best bad guy in all the Karate Kid movies.
Yep. Yes. There's not much to like about Chosen. You see Johnny, Johnny's cool, and you can tell that he's been warped by, Kreese and stuff, stuff like that. But yeah, Chosen is just flat out, from the minute we meet him, he's a conniving little backstabber, and he squeezes Daniel's hand. There's no reason for him to hate him, because they haven't even talked yet. The only reason he hates him is because he's friends with who he sees as a coward.
Well, because of what Sato has poisoned him with.
No, but really though, if you're really truly an honorable student or a true martial artist, your grudge that your sensei has does not become your grudge. And if your sensei is an honorable person, and they talk about respect and honor and things, it's okay for him to have the grudge, but it's not the grudge that you would hold for somebody else's student.
I don't know about that, because your grudge is my grudge. Your honor is my honor, right? So if someone besmirks your honor, you besmirk I would avenge your honor, right? So if you called someone a coward, right?
Right.
I would
so
agree with you.
Chosen should be trying to beat up Miyagi, not Daniel, because he's the one who assaulted Sato's honor, right? That's what you're getting at?
Something like that, but you're right. But they're also, and I agree with what you said, Andy, is that they're also extensions. Chosen and Daniel are extensions of Sato and Miyagi.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch the Kung Fu movies, right, the old school Kung Fu movies, the fun ones that actually come from China, where they've got
the best ones,
where They've got Pai Mei with a really long beard or whatever.
Yeah, and where the
Um,
dubbing is so bad, their lips are still moving.
on purpose. If the sensei or if the Sifu gets
Oh
killed
man, I like seafood.
or beat up, okay? It's like Andy said, his students avenge Sifu by beating up the person who did it, not by beating up their students per se. They go
Yeah.
for the guy who wronged their Sifu.
Yeah, but in that sense, though, yeah, if I want to get at you and I can't get at you right away, I'll beat the shit out of your students until you come to me. And that's exactly what Chosen was doing, right?
Yeah, but again, though, if I go to another culture, do I think it's probably a good idea for me to immediately kind of mess with? I'm going to the birthplace of my martial art. I've been doing martial arts for now. Okay,
That's not Topeka, Kansas, is it?
he started martial arts in November. Okay.
And then they
Started
go in
martial
the
arts in
summer.
November. He fought, and then he had the tournament in December, and this is presumably when he was 16. So theoretically, that would have been his sophomore year in
Yeah.
high school.
He would
So
have.
he would have been training for about 2 years in karate. If he never stopped training, because clearly he's graduated high school in
No,
the second.
Daniel was actually 17 in the first movie.
No,
No,
it was the 17. No, think about it, though. It's the 17. It's the 18 and under championships. So
Yes.
Daniel, even though they say he's 17, the timeline doesn't match up because he's still able to fight in the under 18 tournament in the third
when
movie.
he reprises
So you
it.
see, there's a
I'm
time
actually going to
discrepancy.
bring that up. And do they still call it the under 18 tournament in part 3? I don't recall because I didn't watch it
I
recently.
don't recall either, but if
They,
they actually stuck with the timeline, it doesn't match up.
It shouldn't match up. He should be well over 18 and should not be able
Right.
to fight in that tournament. And
Unless
Barnes
you
is
made
clear-
him 16 in the first movie, but he's
Okay.
not. I mean, he gets his license in the first movie,
right.
so you're thinking, well, maybe he's turning 16. But if you read the synopsis of the movie, he's supposed to be playing a 17-year-old.
Exactly. Who just didn't get his license for whatever reason when he was.
Well, you don't need one.
Exactly.
You don't need one in Jersey.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
that's
Because
what you didn't
public transport and everything else.
Well,
yeah.
apparently you also didn't need one in California either, because when Miyagi tells Daniel-san to drive, he says, "I don't have a license." Neither does Miyagi. It okay. So apparently I
never
guess you
thought
don't need a license.
It's a different
right.
time.
It was the 80s, man.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is what Daniel tells Allie when he has her drive his brand new birthday car.
Yeah, you're right. It's the 80s.
It's the 80s.
Well,
So anyway, back to
I don't know,
part 2, the best movie of the bunch.
yeah. So I think though that if I went to Okinawa, let's just say that, if I went to Okinawa, I'm not going to go mess with someone who's belted in our style. Let's just say.
But this is
Chances
also
are good that I
Well-
would get my taint handed to me.
this is also the same guy who, after the drama was a few weeks behind him, then decided to mess with Johnny Lawrence in the bathroom for no particular reason.
Yeah. So you're saying that he's not that smart.
What we're saying is Daniel is a nice, a super nice kid, but pretty dumb in terms of.
he's misguided.
Yeah. He probably isn't making the best decisions.
Plus, you have to
Ronz
think.
would do it.
Well, plus you have to think that maybe after he wins the tournament and he keeps training with Miyagi, because I'm assuming if you go by timelines, maybe, because I think he goes on summer vacation to Okinawa with Miyagi. So one would probably assume if they screwed up the timeline that he goes immediately following the spring or the winter when the tournament happened. So he's only probably realistically been training for less than a year.
Yep.
But he won the tournament. So you would assume his ego is probably also sky high through the roof because, he goes in and he wins this tournament with honestly very little training. So it's not far-fetched to think he might, start picking fights and going kind of in on whatever he can find.
Yeah, I think
Well, he
you're
definitely
right.
makes bad decisions in
Yeah.
the second movie.
Well, the timeline, like you said, is skewed because if he goes, the money that he gets is for starting college in and usually college starts in the fall. So he's leaving during the summer. And when was the tournament? I mean, you're right. It's like, well, what have you done after the tournament? Oh, you're ready for Okinawa. Yeah, I think you're ready to take out the badass over there. Let's go.
Well, see, I don't think that Johnny's a senior in the first movie. They don't say that Daniel's a senior.
Yeah.
No. So I don't think Daniel's a senior in the first movie. I think he's a junior. I'm assuming he's a junior.
Possibly, but
and
if
he
you
fights
look
in the under 18.
Yep, but if you look, part one ends and then part two starts. I know we're not saying we're just saying part one right now to save time, so I don't have to say Karate Kid.
You don't want me to yell at you? You don't want me to yell at you?
Yeah, I don't want to get yelled at like the Ronz. But so that ends, and because this one starts with him limping out of the shower, which I was just reading, and apparently that's how the first movie was going to end, with that scene with them outside and Kreese punching the windows. That's how the first movie was going to end, which I think is a pretty dumb.
Talk about that. Damn.
Right? Yeah, we didn't even talk about it, which I think is a dumb way. I'm glad they didn't end it that way.
Yeah.
So then that in turn happens, and then it says 3 or 4 or 6, 6 months later, because as you mentioned, they just got done with prom, which is usually a May thing, and he wants to go with him, and Miyagi says, no, that money is for college. He goes, I can get a job and go 6 months later. So I think Daniel was a junior, you're right. And then that year, because Johnny would have graduated, and then Daniel was a senior, that's why he was so pissed in the first movie. He had to transfer as an actual senior, which would suck. Riding your bike to school. When all these other kids have
I think that there just wasn't, honestly, I think that there just wasn't any planning, and it's just one of those things that they're like, we'll just go along with the story. Nobody's going to really think about it.
Exactly. Until about 30 years later, when poor assholes are talking about it online.
Exactly.
That sounds good to me.
Yep.
Yeah. If you tried to match up the timeline personally, I would say that my guess would be that Daniel was actually a junior, Johnny was a senior.
Agreed.
That's what I would think.
Yeah, because
that gives him an entire year of training in karate before he goes to Okinawa. So basically a year and a half worth of training before he ever goes to Okinawa. And maybe that's why he thinks he actually knows something.
More than he knows, yes. And I think that is also the reason I like this movie so much, is just the change of scenery from, California to Okinawa. It's just, and you get to walk down these like streets, and Danielson seeing the remnants of this old war in this town that has literally time has forgotten. It's just a pretty cool juxtaposition to the first movie, which is all palm trees and blondes and stuff like that. So
yeah, and it does the fish out of water concept really well too, because you're like, Daniel is experiencing everything with the audience, so it's a lot more inviting than the first one, where it's like you've seen California, now see kids doing karate in California.
And it also makes sense, because when I was watching it more recently, I was like, everybody speaks English there.
I was just going to bring that up.
It does make sense, because the actual military base has been there for so many years.
Well, the military, exactly. Because we're in Okinawa next to a military base. Absolutely.
So it makes perfect sense.
Well, here's what gets me, right? Because when they're in a town, right, B.D. Wong, who is a character actor, but goes on later to do Law and Order, and comes up to him and speaks directly to, what's her name? Kumiko? Right? Yeah. In English, not Japanese, straight away. It's like, hey, there's a dance. Would you like to come? And you think if you're going to talk to another person from Japan and Okinawa, you speak directly to them and their native language. But he goes, and bring your friend here too. And there is no hint of a Okinawan or Japanese accent there. It's like,
it's not in the script. It wasn't in the script.
Because it's one of those things where, they kind of hope you won't think, but like there is, because there is history supporting it, because we had control of Okinawa for so long, and then we Americanized so many aspects of the island that it's not, outlandish to think that people would be speaking really clear English. But that's Also, something that they never, I mean, they touch on the military base like a very tiny, tiny bit when they first arrive there, and then they don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, my first duty station was in Germany, and a lot of people spoke English,
Well, German.
and they take
well,
it from a very young age in school. So
Yeah,
you know.
it's a second language over there, but most Japanese.
You mean as opposed to their native language?
Yeah,
Wouldn't any language be a second language over if it's not
yeah,
German?
yeah.
in
Well, I was
Germany?
over the Netherlands, right, and English was a second language. But over there, if you got more into the deeper aspects or regions, they didn't speak English. And I figured you're right with the American influence in the of the American base there. But when directly
Thanks for
speaking,
clarifying that.
oh, you're welcome. That's why I'm here, because you said I was an expert. So, but if you're talking to
And
somebody,
karate, not about culture.
well, but when you're talking to somebody like from that country, language to language, you wouldn't switch. And yes, it moves the story along. It does. So, yeah, we're not supposed to know about that. We're not.
So Daniel runs off to check out the academy again, the karate school. Did you notice? Now here we go, guys. This is where I'm going to defer to Ron's expertise. Ron,
Yes, sir.
Daniel runs over to check out Sato's school.
Hi.
Sato is trained in Miyagi-Do. He was trained by Miyagi's father. Therefore, he knows the style that Miyagi knows.
Hey.
And he is teaching those students presumably the same thing. Why would he teach anything else, right?
What is your question, Beef-san?
My question is this. This is where we get a picture of what Miyagi-Do actually is. What was the symbol on their dogi, Ronz? What school was it?
Oh, you ask good question. So
He
let me
doesn't know.
counter.
Racist. That's racist.
Why I look it up online and distract you. I don't know. Actually, that's interesting.
Something that you would notice. I thought you would notice it. Andy?
I can recall the image, but I'm drawing a blank, to be honest with you, man.
It is the common symbol of Gojo Ryu.
Ah,
okay.
Okay.
That's what.
Theirs is yellow. The kind of the straight up fist.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Yep.
Oh,
that
the
is
symbol. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what's on their. That's what's on their dogis.
I thought that was Black Lives Matter. How wrong
boy.
I've been.
The fist is yellow, Ron. How'd you confuse that one?
Colorblind.
Yellow lives matter.
Oh, we're going to hell for that one.
Yeah. So these are fun things that you find out later on. It's just really cool.
Yes.
So I'm guessing that that's a nod. As you go through, you're like, oh, here's nods to this. So Miyagi-Do karate probably is, one could argue is probably, we know it's made up. It's not a real martial art.
Right.
Mhm.
But if we wanted to find some kind of, I would say that's probably what we got to go with. We got to say that Miyagi-Do probably is Gojo Ryu.
Yeah. Stems from.
Even though we know that Mr. Miyagi, the actual character himself, is actually Fumio Demura. That character is based on him. And was they actually asked him to play that character, but he turned it down. So instead he does the stunt doubling for Pat Morita. But he's a Shito-Ryu guy. Shito-Ryu. Karate. But speaking of what I always like to find out, who actually knew martial arts in the second Karate Kid movie? I defer back. Ralph Macchio? Not then, not ever.
Nope.
Everyone knows. Pat Morita? Still no.
Nope.
That brings us to Chosen.
Nope.
No.
What?
Because I don't think
Anyone?
so.
Ron
No.
Thomas.
If I had to pick one person, probably maybe Chosen.
I would actually pick Kumiko. I bet she's the only martial artist out of everybody.
You might be right. I didn't actually look her up. But no, Chosen actually was a martial artist when he started
really?
that movie. He started training at the age of 13 in Shito-Ryu karate.
Oh, sweet.
He also trained in Shotokan, Kachokenbo, and Judo. And he was, at the time of filming The Karate Kid, he was a brown belt in karate.
Interesting.
But so was Ron Thomas. He has one of the Cobra Kai's in the background. The second degree black belt in jiu-jitsu.
We're on to part 2 now, Ron.
Yeah, but he was in part 2 in the beginning of the scenes.
Nobody gives a fuck about minor characters.
Hey, you
Keep
asked the
bringing
question.
up.
I answered it.
You're talking about 30 seconds of the first movie of a minor character that nobody gives a shit about.
Which, thanks to Andy, we now know was pretty much just how they were going to end the first movie.
Here's a little fun fact, though, about Yuji Okamoto, who plays Chosen. Speaking of when I was in Seattle, if I would have known this when I was in Seattle, he's got a restaurant there called Kona Kitchen. It's a Hawaiian-themed restaurant. I totally would have gone there and done some fan service and met him.
That would have been awesome. Whoa, he has been in over 96 movies.
Wow.
Yeah, and apparently he had a TV series on some network.
Oh, yeah, it's on some network.
I can't think of that network. It was called Katana back in like 2009. It was one of those offshoot networks, and I can't think of what it was.
Oh, I see it right here. Katana. Oh, look at that. You're right. In the darkness of the Yakuza underworld. It just doesn't say what channel it was on. Now I wish I would have known.
Like Strike TV or something like that?
Like
or...
Spike?
Oh, yeah. No.
Maybe.
You are correct. There is a news article from January 2009. Katana Slices Dices premieres on Strike TV.
It sounds awesome. I kind of want to watch it now.
I do too. I want to watch it too.
I want to see it. Because you know what? And I was saying this when I was watching this show with the boy, because Daniel is so short, you know, and I was like, so is Chosen short? But apparently he's not. He's really freaking tall. I don't know how did they make Daniel so freaking tall? And Chosen's even wearing tall shoes in the movie. So how did they make Daniel look so damn tall?
Chosen is 6 foot. So they probably used he's actually 6.5 feet. So they're probably using platforms.
What they do.
According to what I have, he's 6'5". No, that's Terry Silver. No, you're right. Chosen is like 6 foot.
Yeah, because
so how did they made Daniel look so damn tall?
Right. It actually says here that Ralph Macchio is 5'9".
Wow.
Yeah.
Typically, it depends on, I guess, if you had to talk about it from a technical standpoint, it depends on what
I'm asking.
Yeah, but it depends on what the scene entails. A lot of times, if you're trying to make an actor look taller, they have these things that they use in movies called apple boxes. So they have them going all the
apple box jeans. No.
Well, they have them going from there's basically 4 levels. There's a quarter. There's a like a wedge, and like there's a quarter, a pancake, and et cetera, all the way until like a really tall apple box, like the size of an apple box.
All the way up to Tom Cruise. They have to put him up.
And that's what they do. They stack. Well, that's why I was saying it depends on the scene, because if you're doing like movement scenes, like how they had to do a lot of movement scenes, it might be different. But if you're doing like scenes where you're just doing talking, and you're doing things where they're mostly stationary or they're walking very set, what you would do for Ralph Macchio, because he's literally the star of your movie, is you'll put apple boxes on the ground where he has to walk, or you make like little tiny platforms, and you essentially just get him up higher than the other actors.
Sort of like a Muppet show where they got the Muppets, they got a platform and they got the Muppets up there, so the actor looks like the Muppets and the actor is the same height. Oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah. You didn't. It was kind of weird how you said it, but I see what you're saying.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. But if you watch the movie, though, this is what I thought was weird. Because Chosen's so tall, and Ralph Macchio's not, in a lot of the scenes, Chosen is wearing tall shoes. Like, wouldn't it have made sense for him not to wear tall shoes?
Well,
yes. Yeah. I mean, dress shoes in the 80s with a big ass heel on them that makes him another half an inch taller, easy, aren't it? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Daniel is always wearing his low top like Nikes.
Yeah, but they could also be padded too.
Flip flops that he has in part 2.
But they could also be padded, so we won't see that it's giving off extra height to him. And also, when they're doing the fight scene, and I'll look at it closely again, is that if it's at an angle, like in Bloodsport, when they bring up the sides, so it makes one side look taller than the other. Like our resident expert filmographer said, pancaking and apple boxes.
You wanted to give us a different perspective on what he already said.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted
Well,
to be important.
To go along with it, though, you would also, it depends on where you would place the camera, but you could use, like what they do a lot of times. I failed to bring to mind an example, but they do it a lot where they force perspective, where you would just place Daniel closer. Yeah, they do a lot in there where when they had like, what was it? They had like Gandalf further away from everybody else and everybody else that was shorter, closer to the camera, or vice versa. You basically just stage your actors how close and far away from the camera you want it to be. So if Ralph Macchio is going to be closer to the camera, you're probably going to want Chosen further away. So they, at least it forces it to look like they're almost similar height.
That's true.
Well, that goes on to my the last ones here. Sato, I couldn't find any information whatsoever that he was a martial artist anywhere.
I don't think Sato. I saw him. I was watching a movie and he showed up in it, and I was like, "Holy crap, it's Sato!" And he has a completely different voice. I was so upset. I was so irritated.
Yeah, he's Hawaiian. Yeah. He's Hawaiian.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he was on like episodes of Magnum PI and remember him for that. But
Son. He was on Sanford and Son.
Fun fact on that one: Sanford and Son, Pat Morita and Danny Kamakana were on Sanford and Son together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. But yeah, I didn't find anything at all saying he was a martial artist whatsoever.
Right. I'm assuming he's probably not, especially if he's Hawaiian. You could probably just get away with not having to do the martial arts.
I mean, I guess, but you know, Hawaiians are pretty. Kenpo comes from. Yeah. Kenpo's kind of big in Hawaii.
Yes, very big in Hawaii.
Yep.
Judo is too, I think, isn't it? Judo is kind of, but then again, it kind of went to a lot of different places. But
right. But
Sato's one of my favorite characters in the movie. Like unlike Kreese, where Kreese is just a complete dick because he's, which when you watch Cobra Kai, you find out a little more reasons why, which I really like that aspect of the show eventually. But Sato is an honorable person in the fact that, sure, he's going about it the wrong way, but he's not a complete dick like, Kreese is. Like Chosen is well taught, and he's now training military U.S. death squads while they're there. Sato felt wrong. He was supposed to marry Yukie, and Miyagi makes this big boast and then leaves. And he's got to deal with this for years and years and years and years.
Right.
Yeah, but he also punishes the town for that dishonor. Instead of punishing the person, he punishes the entire town, and that's dishonorable. Right?
But he did it to try to get Miyagi to come back.
But that's still dishonorable.
Yes, but the actual person himself is, that's another fault of an honorable person who's trying to be too honorable. So if that makes sense, because he's taking his honor so seriously that he's not thinking about the consequence. He's not outright doing that to the town to be a dick. He's clearly not. Because as soon as he sees the error in his ways, he brings in his own stuff and he gives the key to the town back over. He was just misguided and angry. We've all got that. But that, to me, still doesn't make him the same as Kreese from the first movie. Kreese is just outright dick. He's a dick. He trains people as a dick. He treats his students as dicks. Like he's So I just like
you're excessively. When they show those scenes of him excessively doing stuff to his students, I'm like, what benefit do you have as an adult man? I mean, that's what I break it down to. I'm like, as an adult man, why would I be punching little kids? Because that's what he's doing. He's beating on little kids. I'm like, okay, you're not training them you're not teaching them anything.
Well, they fly that much farther in the air when you hit them. Right? They really get that good. Yeah. No, I understand where that's going.
But no, the second Karate Kid is cool because it makes everything fantasy based or romantic based, like you said. Because you look at it and you go, oh, to them, there's little scenes where Mr. Miyagi's like, Daniel-san, here respect is everything. Stuff like that. That's really important when you see, your honor is everything, respect is everything. And Miyagi obviously felt guilty about what he did. The funny thing that I thought about this movie, and I thought it was funny watching it years and years ago, and now I still think it's funny, is when he's like, Yukie, why you no marry? You know, he's all happy that she never got married. I'm like, that's a dick move. You're happy that she never got married.
Right.
You went off and got married. Why she couldn't get married?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's
and
true.
we didn't even talk about that from the first movie. Is the fact that you find out that really his wife and child died in a internment camp essentially,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
a terrible moment. I mean, and then he gets to do that also. But then you see this. Yeah, you're right. He's like, oh, you never married. I guess we can start hooking up again. But it was one
Yeah,
of
Yeah,
those
you're
where
right, because
So what
when
you're
he
saying
came-
is,
yeah, when he came to America, he's like, well, that was my old life. Let's hook up over here now. So,
yeah, he's like, so you're saying nobody's hit that? Oh,
um
all right.
back to some other reasons why this movie is my favorite. The soundtrack from the very start, it's a lot darker, it's a lot deeper. It's just it plays into the movie and the overall theme more. And I think my absolute favorite Miyagi line is when he's trying to sleep when they're flying, and Danielson keeps he's reading and he keeps bugging him with all these questions. He's like, maybe you go to sleep and tomorrow Tomi village be there. And then he's just trying to go to sleep, and Daniel just looks, he goes, if you would have fought, would your dad have refereed? And he's just like, I'm just trying to sleep, kid. He's just, but
Yeah, he's like, shut the fuck up.
yeah, but the absolute best line that sells what the actual stakes of this movie are, when he goes, well, if there's no referee, how do you know who wins? And Miyagi simply goes, the one who dead doesn't. I was just like, wow, geez. Okay, this is pretty legit. We're not just talking about points here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you see there were a couple of things that I caught wrong, but the one that glares out the most is, did you see the weapon that Sato used? Right? He uses two weapons in the movie. One, he uses a nunti, a fisherman's spear, which I was trained in. So that was pretty accurate.
Now we're gonna get to it.
Right? Chosen,
What?
you're actually talking about? Chosen?
Yeah, Chosen uses the nunti. He goes, did your master train you in using the spear? He goes, no. Then maybe I teach you. And I saw the aspect of that. But there's a second weapon he uses that I don't think was indigenous to the culture. Do you know what it was?
A rag?
Tell, dude.
And
No.
Daniel punched the nuts?
No. That actually is a quite good move. I like that
Yes,
one.
it is. Yeah, it's probably the best move Daniel does in the whole movie.
It's the
Are you
balisong
talking
knife.
about the
butterfly
bali
knife.
song?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's called a bali song.
A butterfly knife or balisong. It depends on where you're at in the world, right? But yeah, because that wasn't
Right.
that wasn't
I'm in the
native
Beaver
to
Den.
the beaver den. Yeah, that wasn't native to the Okinawan culture, right? And when I saw him flipping around, I'm like, I know that weapon. That's not in Japanese culture. At least I don't think it is. That's more, I think, Filipino, if anything.
So what you're gonna say is you're saying that it's not a Japanese weapon, but you can't say where it came from.
I could look it
I'm
up.
gonna
but-
say China.
Okay, fair enough. But I think you're wrong.
I don't know though. I don't really think it matters because that's like saying you can't appropriate another weapon to learn a different weapon.
I didn't say that. It's just that if you're to Okinawan traditions, to what the Schuyler man said, is that you're using Japanese culture to show the origin of karate, the origin of the bone dance that they're doing, and
He
everything.
also doesn't use that knife as a weapon anyway. He just throws it away.
Oh, he uses it as a weapon against the throat, right? To force.
He doesn't
Daniel-
use it as a weapon. He just throws it away.
He uses
He doesn't.
it.
What is your definition of using a weapon? He doesn't even use it.
I guess.
He draws no blood.
He threatens
does
with
nothing
it.
with
Yeah,
it.
he threatens
That's
with
it.
it. I guess that would be the intent of what I'm saying, because he actually uses it as a weapon to draw Daniel in, and then he throws it away. You're right. So
I would say by the 80s, I think that knife was pretty universally worldwide, but you are right. They could have had him use an actual, wakizashi or something more.
He pulls a
Japanese.
giant sign out.
Pulls a giant sword out and holds Kumiko's throat with it.
Get this out.
So
Well, I mean, if you really wanted to get down to it, if you want to be a total purist, he would have used no weapons at all.
exactly.
mhm. So it actually originated in the Philippines, right? It's a balisong, also known as a fan knife, a butterfly knife, or Batangas knife. So yeah. So I was just surprised that because they were so hyped on the Japanese culture and the Japanese way of doing things, right? In fact, when you look at Miyagi's dojo, right?
Or was he more into the Okinawan culture?
Yeah. Well, when you're at Miyagi's dojo, right, you look in, they've got a lot of Okinawan weapons on the wall. So I didn't see the ballet song or the butterfly knife on there at all.
Maybe what that plays into is the fact that Chosen's now lost his way and he's not focusing on the core Okinawan traditions, and it's just a hell of a lot flashier to do that.
Oh, look at the big brain on you! Yeah,
hold it to Kuko's neck.
Well, and it's more common at that time frame. That is a more common weapon for somebody to carry or whip out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the time frame where it's set, it makes sense from like just a perspective of it being like that is a common thing to happen in that time. But it definitely is like not a traditional, weapon that they probably would have on them just in general, unless you were, part of the youth who would take in more of different cultures living on Okinawa.
Exactly. I remember I was in Europe. I had 2 of them, so that's why I know. So that wasn't.
I was just going to say, who here has had one?
Who
here actually knows how to flip it out and do the cool little flips with it?
I do. I used to. You can ask Gary. I used to carry around a couple.
Why would I? I don't believe you. You were such a nerd that I assumed that you did have one.
Yeah.
I've got an actual like training one that you can flip around, and I've flipped around that before. So.
I had an actual real one that I got from a Filipino, actually.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Because he broke my buck knife throwing it.
That's what he gave you.
So he's like, dude, I'm sorry I broke your knife. I'm like, no, it's cool. He's like, here, take my ballet song. I'm like, all right, whatever. Thanks.
And then you started coming around like, wow, this is pretty sweet.
Yeah, you just can't throw it.
Exactly.
Depending.
Yeah. Anyway. No, great. Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, still my favorite one.
Easily.
But what's the I'm trying to think of the flaws on it. No, I liked it because again, simple movements, direct and to the point, no glory hounding, there's no like move that you're watching that they do that you're just like, oh, that's just super cool. He did some awesome whatever flip or whatever. No, he just went for pure destructive, straight up karate moves. And that's the difference, I think, again, too, when you look from a martial arts perspective, and you can show that, I'll talk about it later on in the other movies, but this is true karate. Karate is not sitting there kicking at these high head kicks and all this other shit.
Right.
Still straight through the opponent, that's right in front of you. Power moves or, redirecting the person. But basically, that's what karate is. Straight, direct, to the point. Doesn't need to be. If you get hit, and I was actually talking with my one of my former teachers earlier. We were talking about Tang Sudo, and it's evolving over time. He asked me a question about Kyokushin karate practitioners. He's like, have you ever seen them? I'm like, yeah, I know for a fact if you get hit by one, you're fucking toast. Because basically the best thing that you can do with those guys, as in general, the rule is don't get hit in the first place. You get hit by one of those in the solar plexus, prepare to throw up.
Did you ever see the series?
Excuse me. Because they practice hitting fucking trees. They just practice punching. They can kick, yes.
Did you ever see the series that there's a guy that goes and trains 7 days with different
Fight
styles?
Club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fight Club. Yeah.
Yeah. And he trains with the Koshikins, and they beat the shit out of trees.
Kyokushin, Ron. Kyokushin.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mistake.
I just want your expertise to come over to words too, not just black belt.
Way to go, Andy! You're fitting it just perfect here. But yeah, they actually they show him squaring up, and he gets his bell rung within the first 2 seconds of the fight because this guy throws a kick right to his head. I mean, you're right. If you get hit, you're going to get your bell rung hard.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true power. I mean, I would consider that. They might say that they've got part of a soft style to them, but that's a pretty hard style.
Super hard style. Yeah, I mean, part of your training is just standing there with your arms up and they punch you in the gut.
Yeah, here, please punch me.
Yeah, please stop it.
And these are real
we
punches.
do that in
Not
our
like the
style.
punches they. Yeah, okay. I was just gonna give you the benefit of the doubt until you said that. You guys punch like little pussies. I could take any of your punches all fucking day long.
No, I was going to say we get punched in the stomach.
Yeah, little pussy punch. Every time you guys do that, do you remember that one time I was like, why don't you guys come over here and let me do it? Or I'll do it. See how many of you stand there while I do it. I guarantee I'd drop you motherfuckers with one fucking punch.
Oh, are you talking about
Well,
when they'll?
Their punches stop where it hits the person. We don't punch like that.
Ron,
We
are
punch
you
through you.
are you referencing when they would do it when you're training in like kata to test your kata stance?
Yeah, it's called Sanchin testing. You're exactly right. Right?
Yeah, depending. I mean, depending on who, because like if Shihan would do it, at least they do it varying based on your belt level, if I
Exactly,
remember
yeah.
correctly.
You are
Shihan
correct.
would usually not pull any punches, but a few other people would be like, I know, especially if I was doing it, I would not. I'd be like, I don't really want to hit you right now.
I think I remember you. I think I remember you having me. You testing somebody or that. You always had this look like, I'm sorry, I have to hit you. Really?
Yeah.
I still want to be your friend. Please
Okay,
don't
well
cry.
let me ask you. Let me ask you this question then, Skyler. Now I have not hit you for real. But I did show
you don't want to admit that on air.
But
because,
we were
that's your son.
training. What was it? We were training last week. I think
Mhm.
it was. And I showed you sort of, and I didn't show you the true secrets yet because I don't want to hit you hard. I
Which I
showed you how we
appreciate.
punch. I showed you basically how we drop our weight and punch through something.
Yeah.
How does that compare to how you were hit in karate?
Back when I did karate, they focus a little bit on doing well, I don't remember if we do it for punches as much, but when striking, they definitely, enforce to use your hips for momentum and use that in movement. But I don't remember off the top of my head if we incorporate dropping weight, because I know you guys do, and it's a whole different ball game. Like it's a whole another level because they teach you to strike through in karate. They teach you to strike through what you're aiming at, just like you guys do in jiu-jitsu. But like the dropping the weight.
Like we are about it. We'll punch through somebody. Just to,
Right.
Yeah, but the dropping the weight is like a whole other level that I don't really remember. If karate does it, it's probably not something I was doing actively when I was learning, but it's like it adds just a whole extra thing to it. And with that momentum and going forward.
Now I gave you maybe 40% power.
Which is too much. Too much.
Now you hit me. How much did I move when you hit me?
Probably not very much, right?
No, I didn't really
Not
move
much.
very much. And I hit you at like 40%. How much did I move you?
A lot, because I was like, whoa.
But back to what Skylar said, right? When we're testing, we test at different belt levels. We currently have one person right now. If we were to hit him, just like you exactly said, right? And at his belt level, this kid would double over in pain. I mean, he would just cry, right? When you got to Skylar's level and my level, yeah, all right, I can understand that if you try to hit us and
Yeah,
we double
they were a
over.
little harder as we, when we got up to like our purple belt test and stuff. Like it was definitely noticeably different.
Yeah. So you build up that
Well,
tolerance.
I'll tell you a story then. Let me tell you the story then. Let me ask you this
Okay.
question,
Okay.
Andy.
Yeah.
As my senior, do we hit people less based on what rank they are?
no, I actually seem to remember. I think you were brown belt, maybe or getting ready for your black belt. And remember, I just had like the best shuto chop to your side I've ever done, and it went right through and down, and you kind of dropped to one knee, and you were like, "Holy shit!" And I just felt great. But we've all had that where but we tend to take it a little bit easy on newer students because we want them to come back. But but if I'm going to square off and John and I are working, or sorry, if the Beaveman and I are working together, we we hit them, and I make sure if they're brand new, I give them a little bit so they know that, hey, we're not here to pussyfoot around. Watch, that's just because we have a different focus on it than karate does, at least at our dojo. I've seen and I've been hit by Shihan, and he drops weight. He just doesn't focus on it because he's trying to get 30 kids to punch and do it in unison and stuff like that. So, he's got a different mindset of what he's trying to in turn teach. And I think a lot of his students like Ronz and Tim and smart people, they pick stuff up by watching him more than what he actually says.
It's one of those things that I've never liked about certain styles. You can tell that they're taught basically to teach a lot of people. And then once you make it to a certain point, then you actually start to learn the real stuff, which we don't do that. We teach you stuff, and we're like, well, if they stay, they'd stay. They don't, whatever. You kind of see who you're wasting your time on, but we don't really change anything. We teach everybody the same stuff, and if they stick with it, they stick with it. They don't, whatever. We don't really do that. My whole point being is that if you get punched by a Kyokushin karate person, it's a lot different than getting punched by someone who is trained in Kobo-yu. And you can see that with some of the other. I went to a dojo in Arizona that's a Kenpo dojo. I went there and trained with those guys. And
they make some contact.
And they make contact. And they had me training with like a second or third degree black belt, whatever. And he did that where they hit you like a bunch of times. He hit me a bunch of times, but it didn't feel like anything because I'm used to being punched by our people. Mm-hmm. And he hit me a bunch of times and didn't drop me. And I just looked at him like, oh, okay. And then I just closed distance and I was on top of him, like in grappling distance. And he's like, oh, shit. It's like, oh, okay. He's like, you didn't even flinch when I hit you. I'm like, what? I didn't even notice you hit me.
However, you've been conditioned. I mean, back to what Skylar said, is that, and what Andy said, day one or, the first couple of weeks, right, we can't pound on somebody because we definitely want them to come back. If all
we don't care if you might.
Yeah. But if all we did was just, hey,
we know if you're going to stick around or not.
If you step onto the floor, right, and you're fresh meat, and all you do is you want to learn, but if all you do is get your ass kicked, you're not going to do anything. And it's not really going to prepare you for the real life if you're going to try and use this. You've got to build up some conditioning towards it. And when Miyagi told Danielson, this not tournament, this is for real, he had probably built up enough tolerance and stamina to fight Chosen at the end to pull through the pain, because you could see.
Not really. You see that he can't take a punch.
Yeah, but he could pull through that pain, though. He may not be able to take a punch.
Well, he was the star.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that changes everything right there. Yeah.
Well, I think it's very indicative of what the different styles kind of are like, because, you're talking about conditioning in jiu-jitsu and conditioning in karate are very different, because even like the very light conditioning that we've done just here at home as a new student, very different from what conditioning might look like in karate as a new student. Because karate, when you first started out, is sure there might be some like slight annoyance or pain just because you're not used to, if you're starting completely fresh, you're not used to any of that stuff. But then like jiu-jitsu, I know that like if you ever glance off the mat and you see people doing over there like it's their first class, you're like, oh yeah, those guys are in a pain.
Yeah.
And it looks fake. That's the thing is, it looks like magic because, you're touching somebody and they fall.
No, I don't
but
think
that's
it's
because
magic.
No, if you were outside looking in, if you're a third person, if you didn't know anything that we did, if you watch it, it looks fake, doesn't it, Andy?
Sometimes, yeah. You can look over and you see parents whose kids are in, karate, and they watch us and they just kind of look at you like, what even happened out there? Yes, because I'll have our first principal wrist lock when somebody new comes in. Beaverman and I can just basically grab their hand and their wrist before we even put it on, and they're already tapping because we're grabbing their wrist like they haven't been grabbed before.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, one
it
of
just
your
looked
black,
yeah.
one of your black belts really impressed me. She came up for a seminar years and years ago. She was a small little woman, and she put her feet on somebody's chest and rolled them.
Oh yeah, that would have been. I think that was Amy because she's one of the black belts, and then the other one may have been Morton's wife. She's was she elderly or was she younger?
I think she was younger. I can't remember. All I remember is watching her put the guy. She rolled the guy. It was so impressive, right?
That would have been, that would have been Amy because
That's
she was the
probably
only
Myra,
female black belt at that time.
Yeah, and I've seen your test, and I've seen the. I think it was your test or somebody else's test I saw, and who your grandmaster came up. I can't think of his name, right?
Because it's none of your fucking business.
Yeah. But the thing is about the conditioning was during the test, right? He says, "Oh, this is how you do your barrel roll, right? That's how because it was and I'm skewing the term though, but it's like
No, we call them barrel rolls.
okay, barrel rolls because he had the person had to be bent over and the other person had to roll over him. He says that's how he's like, do you know what you're doing? He's like, yeah, I'm doing this motion. He says, good. I'd like to see 10 more done correctly now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow. Because you could just see the sweat dripping off this guy's face. And it's like, but he was being conditioned as well as he was conditioned to take it and push himself in further, like in the final scene.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't think so. I feel like that Daniel is, even though it's my favorite, and this was why I like chosen as a good bad guy, is because Daniel was completely unprepared for that fight, and he won that fight out of pure luck and bullshit.
Which is how most fights go. Yes, correct.
Yeah, totally. I mean, totally lucky. And again, though, this is why I like the fight scenes in the first two. Actually, let me say the first three movies, even though I don't like the third movie, is because these are actual. Even though there's very little flashiness, it's straight. If you get hit, if you honestly get hit, if you actually get punched, it sucks.
Yes. For everybody, whether you're black belt, white belt, green belt, camo belt, getting punched
camo
sucks.
belt, yeah.
Yes.
It sucks. Most fights do not last that long. They just don't.
You will be tired because punching, you start holding your breath when you know you should be breathing. You just get worn out by doing things because your body is in a ramped up state.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. One thing to tie back what you said earlier, Beaverman, was I do like the fact that the most flashiest kick Chosen does is when he does that jumping side kick and he kicks part of that lion.
The statue.
Oh yeah, the statue.
But had he actually landed, he would have hit Daniel right in the actual solar plexus. He wasn't kicking at his head. He just did a jumping side kick, and that's the most flashiest move we've gotten in the whole fight. And I like that it's more grounded and it's more, traditional style kicking. Like when he does a spinning back kick, it's a spinning back kick that's going to hit somebody in the stomach, not in the face.
Yeah, and here's my question with that. And we're going to defer to Ronz as our karate expert. Ronz, is that a common karate kick?
Which kick are we talking about? The spinning back kick or the flying side kick?
Yeah, the flying side kick.
No, it's not.
That's what I'm saying. Is that a traditional Okinawan or Japanese kick?
As far as I can tell, no, it's not. For the simple
Do you
reason.
learn said kick, Ronz?
No, we don't. Not in this style.
Yeah,
And do you learn any side foot kicking?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. You learn a fair amount.
Fair amount. But being trained in another style, and going back to what you guys said about being flashy, the flying side kick is done for two reasons. One, to put distance, cover distance, right? Basically, and two, to plow through the guy and get to the door, right? Because if you're going to do that, you're probably going to land wrong. You're going to be able to kick him out of your way, and you should just keep your ass running. Because if you've got to do that, then it's not worth it. As an instructor once told me, I'm not going to teach any of the flashy. Yeah, no, I did compared to him. He was great. But he said, I won't teach you any of the, I won't show you any of the flashy stuff because flash gets your ass kicked in a heartbeat. And he was
Yeah.
right. It does. Right. Spinning heel kicks, spinning hook kicks, side kicks, right, are all, well, with the exception of side kicks, anything spinning, right, can be considered flash because you've got to distance your opponent, right? If they're too close, you're going to hook them in, right? And that's where a hook kick comes in. But if they just step back, you just spin out of control like a ballerina. And I think the Beaveman would look, you'd look like a pretty ballerina.
Is this a common kick?
No, it's not. No.
Yeah, compared to something like in Tang Sudo, when you guys did Tang Sudo, you do at least from my recollection, you did do a fair amount of kicks where you would turn and do like the back foot kicks or like the it had a lot of more flashy moves where some of it was a little more involved with that kind of stuff. But like in karate, as far as I got up in my rank, there's only one kata in my memory where it has like one move that could maybe even slightly be considered like a jumping kick, if I'm remembering right. It's like the only we only learn like one, and you don't learn, huh? No, no, we
kind of where you kind of kick with your right foot and land, and then you immediately jump up and kick with the left foot. It gets kind of like 1-2 because I've seen them do that kata before.
Yeah.
But it's like their kick is about waist high.
Yep, and it's not straight. It's more of an actual like looping in, kind of like a weird crane or almost axe kick, excuse me, because it comes from the outside in a little bit, and then you land, and then you guys collect yourself, and then you kick with the left foot to go back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's the only one where that's the only one I remember where it's like we actually go off the ground for kicking, because it's most of the movements aren't flashy, but like compared to something like Tang Sudo, I remember Tang Sudo's moves being a lot more flashy compared to Kobu's.
Well, there's a theory behind that, and I don't know how accurate it actually is. Because Tang Sudo is a same thing, derived from a Chinese martial arts. The other thing you have to remember is when Korea was invaded, they were still invaded by people on horseback. So the theory is the reason why their kicks are so high is because they were kicking people off of horses.
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't know how actually true or factual that is. That's what I was told. I don't know if that's true or not.
Makes sense to at least train for it. You know what I mean?
Right. So, their kicks are very high. I mean, at my advanced age, I could do a spinning back kick leaving the ground, which, I don't know that I would do it now, but I could do it. And my teacher, who was 70 years old, could still do it. So, again, enough flash. Don't know how practical it is. It looks pretty.
Yeah. I'm not even 23 and I wouldn't attempt that.
Now at 47, I don't think I would attempt it.
When you watch the fight scenes, a back kick is good, right?
Oh, yeah. If you don't chamber the kick. If you go right from the ground like a mule,
yeah.
It's a very good kick.
Yeah, but if
you bring it in front of you and then kick, it's too slow.
Right. And thankfully, Daniel doesn't chamber much in the way of kicks.
No, he doesn't. I mean, again, that's why I like the movies. I like these movies because there's no flash as opposed to what we would see in the typical 80s movies that we were used to that are considered actual martial arts movies. I don't know that you call these real martial art movies. They're just fun because of the storyline you're so invested in the storyline itself. The karate is so very little of the movie.
Yes, it is. But it's so very little, yet more people I know started to get into martial arts movies because of these movies. So these are like the gateway drug, quote unquote, of martial arts movies. Because you watch this and you're like, because I watched this and the movie that you mentioned last week, No Retreat, No Surrender.
Yeah.
That is a Karate Kid clone. A kid has to move.
Yeah.
He goes to a new school. He gets picked on by a rival school, and he learns from the ghost of Bruce Lee, which still, I love the movie, but it drives me nuts that he says, call me Sifu Lee when he is Chinese and not Japanese. Call me Sensei Lee. I was like, wait a minute. He just wait, what?
Sorry, what?
But so yes, so I watched, this was the first what I would consider martial arts themed movie that I watched, which opened the floodgates of blood sports and kickboxers, and those are totally flashy. You're right. No fight would you see somebody jump up and do a spinning 360 split kick like Jean-Claude Van Damme. But that's one of my favorite screen kicks of all time because it looks cool.
Right.
But
No Retreat, No Surrender. At least you can say in that movie there are real martial artists in that.
There are very much so real.
The
martial
guy that
artists.
Jean-Claude Van Damme fights, the brother of that girl, he's an actual.
Yes.
He was an actual karate champion, I believe.
I think he trained with Benny.
kickboxer.
I think that guy trained with Benny the Jet or Kitas, who, has
But
like
yeah, there were
9.
real martial arts. There were real martial artists in that movie, which is why they had bad acting. Yeah, there was real bad acting.
No retreat, no surrender.
But like you said, it is always good to have the title in there. Never once in any of these movies is the Karate Kid said as a sentence to let you know that was the name of the movie.
Exactly.
And they definitely never said the Karate Kid Part 1. That was never said.
Yeah, you're right. The more you watch the movie, you're thinking, how many times was there actual karate or fighting in there? And then you're right until you get to the end, and then all you can think is, I just watched the best karate movie ever. There's so much fighting, and then you realize there was only maybe 10 minutes worth of it, and then the other was storyline.
Well, it's like in the. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like in the reboot where they don't even really do karate.
It should have been called the Kung Fu Kid.
Well, in the reboot, yeah. Well, I don't know. Second movie, arguably my favorite.
Easily.
Yeah.
Agree.
He's my favorite. Because you know what? I hated Chosen. He scared the shit out of me.
Yep.
Way more than Johnny or anybody else did. And it had a good moral story. This is where you got all the real lessons. All the real lessons and phrases, actually, that's most of them where they came from, was that second movie.
So, with that said,
The only one that didn't come from it was the whole thing where Daniel asked Mr. Miyagi in the first movie, "What belt do you have?" And he's like, "J.C. Penney's, $3.98. Do you like?"
Yeah.
Canvas.
So, would you say that the historical Japanese honor was spot on?
Well, no, because they're in Okinawa.
Well, that's what I meant. I mean,
Why don't you get it? Why don't you get that Okinawans don't necessarily, depending on the time frame, tell you they're Japanese, right?
I understand that. I really do. But would you
And
say
when you
that
look at the history of martial arts, they totally separate the two. Remember I said, and don't quote me, I could be wrong, but karate didn't come to Japan for almost 400 years from Okinawa. That's crazy.
That is nuts.
I understand that.
To answer your question, Ronz, unfortunately, I don't know how 100% accurate it is because I'm not Okinawan or Japanese. So
I also am not. But I also found out, thanks to my son the other day, that I'm not Mexican.
Oh no!
We don't have
Hello,
to get
what
into
are
this.
you?
We don't have to get into this now.
Yeah,
No.
yes, we do.
No, this is a different podcast. But
Don't deny your heritage.
so I don't know if the honor is done 100% correct, but it rings true to me when I watch it. It seems like Sato is played with conviction, and Chosen feels slighted. And again, as somebody who's grown up listening to how his uncle's honor has been sullied, it makes sense.
So, with that said, is it following Asian culture then pretty accurately on honor?
We don't know.
Well, to you.
It's romanticizing for us.
Okay.
We are Americans. We
It's
have
definitely
this
still-
stylized idea of something.
It's
that
still
we don't
very.
understand.
It's still, no matter what, going to be a very Americanized version of whatever the producers and the creative people thought Okinawa would be like. I mean, sure, they probably could, they probably did do a decent amount of research, because assuming they did go to Okinawa, that's not something you could just do. That takes a lot of time and preparation and studying. But no matter what, at the end of the day, it's an American movie from the 80s. So something is going to be, stuff is going to be over the top or romanticized or, kind of put in this specific light. Whether or not it is accurate or not, they're still going to
Well,
Yeah.
allow me to ruin one thing for you. It was actually
by all
filmed
means.
in Hawaii.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, it
Yeah.
was.
Well, there you
Yep.
go. So it's not accurate.
But
Half the actors were from L.A.
but they did
Or of
actually
Hawaiian descent.
they did rebuild all those little shanties so it matched an Okinawa town that would have been at that point in time. So
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
yep.
Yeah, it's pretty
So,
interesting.
Well,
Yes.
probably if you want to spoil it even more, I mean, it's
by all
like any
means.
other movie, right? You consult on stuff that you don't that you don't know anything about, or you write about stuff that you know. You know,
Exactly.
if you're going to develop a show about medical stuff, you're going to consult with medical people so that it's not completely asinine and stupid. So
Mhm.
if you look at it though, I mean, you can't even consult, if I'm correct, they couldn't even really consult with Mr. Miyagi or Pat Morita on Japanese culture 100% because wasn't he born like in America?
I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure, yeah.
I mean, he's American.
Well, that's
I don't
originally.
think I'm pretty sure he didn't even speak Japanese.
Well, that's why they originally the studio wasn't very set on having Pat Morita because he was on Happy Days, right? Is that the show he was on?
Well, and he's a known like comedy comedy actor.
Yeah,
He was born in California.
He
Yeah.
was 1932.
so they didn't know if because their first choice was somebody who actually was from Japan,
It was
but they
Fumio
didn't speak.
Demura.
Yeah, but they didn't speak like the right amount of English, or there was some kind of breakdown in translation and stuff. So they fought for Pat Morita. But yeah, you couldn't really. I mean, nobody's gonna know the true extent of what he knew about his own culture. But yeah, like you would definitely have to ask somebody else about all that different kind of stuff.
Like, we're gonna ask him. No, they asked Fumio Demura to do it. He turned it down because he didn't feel like his English was good enough to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, but he still he still consulted on it and he played the stuntman.
Yep.
Which I feel like, I mean, obviously Pat Morita immortalized it. I still feel like it would have been cool to see more of his influence on the movie though.
Exactly.
Because he wasn't the choreographer. That's what I always thought was weird. I'm like, why would you have him but not have him choreograph?
Right. Unless maybe he was too traditional and wasn't able, maybe he didn't do it. Maybe he didn't choreograph well enough or didn't want to worry about that because he's, but yeah. And the fact that he was an actual Tang Sudo guy, like you had mentioned before.
Right. Which gets a little bit, which is why I was telling Ronz, I'm like, what's the command that he says?
Yeah.
Jujubes.
Jujubes.
It's not Jujubes? I thought it was. I'll have to look that up because, well, do you think when you watch the movie, right, for someone who's never seen the movie, does this add to the either the mystique of karate or does it stereotypically say that you can learn karate fast?
No, I think it's exactly how Ralph Macchio sees himself as an ambassador of martial arts. I think that it's still now, just like when the last one came out with Jaden Smith, I think it gets people interested in wanting to learn martial arts.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It gets people in that door. Like I said, I had Karate Kid pajamas and I wanted to get the real thing because I had these pajamas, but I wanted a real gi. And how do you get one? You go take karate.
So what got you into martial arts, Beaveman?
What?
What got you into that? Was this one of the movies that inspired you to join?
Well, the movie came out when I was.
Well, it doesn't
say
have
no
to be right
because
away.
I didn't take up jujitsu until I was 38 years old. 38, 39. I've taken Shotokan and I've taken a little bit of Kung Fu, but mostly I prided myself on knowing military combatives. So I wanted to put my children in martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started before you did.
Not, because my parents never expressed any interest in getting me into it. So I started my children in it with my wife first, and then I started taking it.
So the Swan was
a different
involved?
style. Notice though I picked a different style completely.
I do. So the Swan, the daughter, and Skylar were all involved. So, but back to the question, what inspired you to join?
He saw we were having fun.
Okay. Yeah.
I finally felt it was time. I finally felt like I had time in my life to take martial arts. Finally.
Yep, I was pretty fortunate growing up when I wanted to do something. If it was something that was physical and active, my parents were both pretty supportive. So I think the first thing I went to was a fly-by-night Tang Soo Do place, and unfortunately, crazy enough, and we did like 2 months, and then they were gone. And then a couple
out
years
of the back of a big van. You can have a gi here. Come here.
Exactly. Come here, kid. Get in this van. I'm like, okay. But then a couple years later, found a Taekwondo place that was close to our summer kind of cabin that we had rented. And
oh, must be nice, Mr. Richie Rich.
It was
cabin.
It was. And
thanks for taking time out to speak with us poor people.
No problem. Anything I can do.
Community service.
But we went 5 days a week because we were up there with nothing else to really do. So I progressed fairly quickly through that, but I realized halfway through Taekwondo was fun, but it wasn't anything that I cared about. And then I had a long dry spell. I did some Muay Thai, some small things here or there, but it was more MMA centered, so it wasn't really focusing on the art of Muay Thai. It was just kicking pads, which it's fun. And then I discovered, Shobudo Jiu-Jitsu. So
interesting.
Yeah, you'll have to ask my dad why because I did Taekwondo very brief time as a child.
So cute. He was so cute. So cute. I still have his dogi top.
We still have my belt somewhere.
Do we?
Hey, Taekwondo is.
He was so cute.
You have to look at it from a certain perspective, and I look at certain styles of martial arts with a lens of Taekwondo teaches you control, flexibility, power, or not a certain type of power, like jumping power, things like that. And if you can target when you're spinning around, that's good to do because it keeps your mind moving and stuff like that. But like you were saying, Beaverman, is it something you're going to use in an actual fight? Or if I close distance on you when you're doing a different style, do you feel uncomfortable? Yes. But I know I have some friends that rag on it, and I'll occasionally just kind of make some jokes about it like we have here. But in the end, if you're training in something and doing something physical that betters yourself, then keep doing it. By all means, keep on doing it.
Yeah.
Just know I will make some jokes at your expense, and then you make some at me for the fact that I can't get down into a half split. I don't, make them, please, by all means.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I'm glad you guys asked me what got me into it.
Oh yeah, what got you into it, Ron?
No, actually, I will say that here's the knowledge that was imparted to me by my trainer in Tang Soo Do, who's I believe he's an 8th Dan now. He said to me, who would win if you took an equally matched practitioner of Tang Soo Do against an equally matched practitioner of your style of jiu-jitsu? Do you know who would win? And I said, I think I know where you're going with this, but go ahead, because I think that we have the same opinion. And he said, okay. He's like, whoever makes the first mistake is the loser.
Miyagi. Whoever not dead win.
Well, what he said is true. If you're equally matched, it's style on style. It doesn't matter. It's whoever screws up first is going to lose.
Exactly.
Meaning nobody's style. You could argue that no one's style is better than anybody else's style.
Yep.
If you're equally matched, it matters on who makes the first mistake is the one who loses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
Exactly.
One of the only wise things he ever said. Everything else was gratuitous. Look at me, kind of like Ronz.
Thank you. Well, the reason I got into it is, the reason I got into it because
I said nobody asked.
Okay.
Ronz, how'd you get into it?
I did.
Oh, thank you. No, I would like the Beaveman. I was bullied in high school. I was bullied in school, and I needed a center.
Show of hands who was totally shocked by this. No, just kidding.
Yeah, there we go. So when I went to England,
Is it because your
when I-
cock was so big they were all jealous?
no, always, always. So when I went to England, I joined Taekwondo there on the base, and I didn't do so good because I didn't put the effort into it. You know,
Your
I
cock
was
was in
in,
the way.
yeah. I started when I was 11, and I dropped
You were
out
in the Air
because
Force at 11?
yeah, I joined when I think I was about 11 in Wetchy
It was on
Room.
the Doogie Howser program.
I woke up one morning and I told my mom I didn't want to go because I was too tired. And so she never sent me back. And then I said, okay. Didn't do that well at Taekwondo in the military at my first base. And then when I went to my third base, it finally clicked on me. I said, you know what? Really
Was
put the
that
effort into
under?
it.
So that's under the bra.
Yeah, it's under the bra, right? And I decided to excel at it. I really did. I put my effort and I put a lot of effort into it and I started to excel at it. And then when I got out, I got into a fly-by-night school up here in Taekwondo because I was going for a black belt. And it was there one day, gone the next. And I'm like, okay. Then I had a dry spell for a long, long time. Roll around, I wanted my son and my wife into it. I didn't want my son to go through the same hell I did, so I put him in martial arts.
Is everybody else's story this long?
No. Well, anyway, I got my son into it, and then I followed him after 4 years on the bench, and my wife and my son have been doing it.
My wife.
My wife.
My wife.
My wife has been doing it for a long time.
My wife.
And I have to say this though.
What was the question? What was the question?
Watching the Karate Kid movies, right, shows you that no matter whether you're rich or poor, if you can find somebody to train you that's reputable, you can learn. Because that's the one thing. They didn't have money for karate lessons, but Miyagi trained him with a purpose. And he said, I will take this payment if you become my, if you sand the floor and do all my chores.
He didn't really say that he's going to take payment, but I get what you're saying. He did enough work for Daniel that would have paid for a couple of years worth of karate.
Yeah.
I mean Daniel did enough work for Mr. Miyagi, rather.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't even made it through the other 2-3 movies or the Cobra Kai series. So we're probably going to have to make it to be continued. But before we go, because unless you guys want to speak into the late hours of the night, we're already at 3 hours and 40 minutes.
By the way, before you continue, before you say anything, thank you for recommending the Cobra Kai series. I'm really getting hooked into it. I won't divulge anything beyond that, but thank you. It's a really good series so far.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on.
Before we get into it, so what's the natural consensus here? Do we drive on, or do you want to be continued for part 3?
This is a to be continued.
I agree. I think
Yeah,
there's way too much to unpack because we're gonna gloss over 3
Yeah.
and then the next Karate Kid, and we'll focus more on Cobra Kai because there's a lot in there to unpack.
and this.
Well, here's one. I just want to throw this out here. Then,
Sure.
I'm kind of skipping over Karate Kid Part 3 and the next Karate Kid, and I just want to say this
How
one
dare
thing. No, we're gonna come back to it. But I just want you guys to think about this. This is just something I want you to think about, and this is in relation to Jaden Smith, Will Smith. Because Will Smith is a huge fan of the Karate Kid. And obviously, if he had his druthers, he would have been, the guy for a Karate Kid, but too old, whatever. This is what I want you to think about. So this is what I felt was wrong with the Jaden Smith version of the Karate Kid. Okay. One, it's called the Karate Kid. Okay. But I feel like this is how they could have saved it and kept it the Karate Kid. And I love Jackie Chan. Don't get me wrong. Love me some Jackie Chan. Saw the movie The Foreigner, by the way, Andy, and I was wrong. I had seen it before, so I ended up watching it twice. Anyway,
Yeah, good flick.
I was like, I feel like the whole time I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen this. But awesome movie. Anyway, highly recommend it. But this is how I would have made the movie. Strap in. This is something for you guys to think about. It should have been, instead of Jackie Chan, it should have been a black American martial artist who was living in China.
Like
That's
Will
who should
Smith.
have trained Jaden, and he should have trained him in karate to beat and win a kung fu championship.
Oh.
And this is why I say this. You could have totally here's my two options for who I think should have been the Mr. Miyagi figure. Either you could have gone total badass and picked Michael J. White.
Ooh, good pick.
Ooh, good one, yeah.
Or if you want to make him older and still, in my opinion, a totally underrepresented but great martial artist, wait for it, Billy Blanks.
Nice.
Ooh. I thought for sure you were going to say, now I'm blanking on his damn name.
That's
right.
right. Blanks.
Yeah. No, I'm blanking on the name now. Jeez. Billy Blanks would have been good. Have you seen him in the Geico commercials, by the way?
Yes.
I can't believe that.
I have not.
If you have,
that's what I want. Just think about that. Think about that's all I could think about the whole time. I'm like, I like that movie, but if
Samuel Jackson, that's who I'm thinking of. Samuel Jackson.
Why wouldn't I pick an actual martial artist?
Because, motherfucker, that's the reason. You just bitch slap the kid around and yell at him.
I think it would have been better to stick with the Karate Kid theme. You've got Mr. Miyagi, who's from Okinawa in America. He's going to teach Daniel karate to win a karate tournament. Stick with the theme. Now you've taken a kid. You've put him in China. Wouldn't it have been better to have him trained by someone who's also displaced just like he is for whatever reason, living in China, being trained by somebody who's American, teaching him American karate to win the Kung Fu tournament?
that would have been cool. I agree.
Okay. All right.
like that
Made your point.
Well, I'm just saying, just think about it. Just, refute me, whatever. But that was my whole time I'm watching. I'm like, why didn't they do this? Why that would have made way more sense. Shit, you could have made Will Smith Mr. Miyagi version.
Yeah.
I mean, he's athletic. He could have pulled it off. I mean,
What about the late Chadwick Boswick?
Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
He's a good.
he would have
He's a
been
good
too young.
actor, but he would have been too young. I agree with.
I was gonna say he would have been really young.
He would have had to been like a Vietnam vet to be given the actual time frame of when that Jaden Smith Karate Kid movie. That's kind of the age I'm thinking. And I think
you could have said, I mean, Michael J. White would have been a good. I mean, he could have been a good one and been trained by his dad, who decided to move to China after like the Vietnam War or the Korean War or something.
at some point, something like that. Sure.
Or something. That's how I would have Americanized it. I'm like, why not make it, like Skyler said, fish out of water. Okay, make his trainer fish out of water also, and he's going to teach him in American karate to beat these guys in kung fu. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Just think about it. Just think about what I said. Shoot holes in it later. Whatever.
I was going to say, what about the actor that played Show Enough?
He was already passed away by then.
Okay.
But Show Enough is awesome.
He is.
Well, I mean, if that, you could have just have, Bruce Leroy.
Yeah, Tymac.
And Bruce Leroy. That guy's awesome.
I've met him too.
Yeah, totally. I'd pick him. All right, then. So I guess we'll wrap it up then, and we'll be prepared then for part 3. Shit, there might be a part 4. One never knows. We got 3 Karate Kid movies to get through, and the totally unbelievable, wild as fuck Cobra Kai. That I could go on for days on that one.
Yep.
All right.
Totally.
All right. Well, then that's it. Let me thank my number 2 as always for joining me and for being the expert in karate that he is.
Oh, I'm not an expert, but thank
for
you.
setting us all straight with our preconceived notions and the what little information or knowledge that we have against the sacred art of karate.
No, I didn't set you straight. I probably put you on a different path away from. Circling.
Te means hand.
Ah.
And
who we should get, to discuss this also, we should get SpongeBob on because he is a karate master.
Yes. So that's it for me. Thank you, Andy, for joining us, resident fellow nerd, and of course the boy, Skyler. Thank you, the man. Now they'll always be my boy. Whatever.
Thank you.
Also for joining us today, and I would like to say adios, mooch fuckos.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey, from the Ronz. Andy, you got the last word?
He said goodbye, motherfucker.
I thought it was Skyler.
Goodbye.
Sounded like Skyler.